They kicked her out of the hospital for not being able to pay, until a millionaire took the baby in his arms and surprised everyone. Dawn fell like a sentence over the city. It wasn't just raining, it was pouring. Water pounded the rooftops, rushed down sidewalks as if it too was searching for shelter. And in the middle of that indifferent darkness, there she was. Sarah trembled, not just from the cold that seeped into her bones, but from the terror she still couldn't swallow. Her lips were cracked, her hair plastered to her face, and her arms held the only thing she had left, her newborn daughter wrapped in a makeshift blanket made from her own jacket. The hospital door slammed shut behind her with a dull thud. No one looked at her twice. No one stopped. She had given birth barely half an hour earlier, between cries muffled by protocols and bureaucracy. The receptionist had told her, without even looking up, that without insurance or money, they couldn't keep her in the ward. No nurse protested. The doctor signed some papers like someone signing a discharge, not a life. And so, nameless, helpless, without dignity, they pushed her out onto the street. Sarah let herself fall against a wall. The concrete was wet, but nothing mattered anymore. She placed her daughter against her chest, trying to share what little warmth she had left. The baby breathed weakly, barely perceptible. Each whimper was a tiny plea that tore through her heart. Cars passed by. Some slowed down. They looked, and they kept going. What kind of world allows this? Sarah thought. Her throat knotted. She had no one to call, not a penny, no home, only this little creature whose existence was now her only reason to stay alive. The wind tore away a tear. She didn't wipe it away. And then, a pair of expensive shoes stopped in front of her. She didn't see them coming. She just felt the rain stop hitting her face. A voice, at first distant then clearer, asked, "Is she alive?" She looked up slowly. The light from a street lamp revealed the face of a young man, impeccably dressed, with an expression of disbelief. Behind him a limousine waited. "Are you alone?" She couldn't answer. She just held her daughter tighter. He looked at the baby, then at her. Something in his eyes changed. God, this can't be happening. And there, between the wet asphalt, the city's steam and contained tears, began a story no one could have foreseen. What would you do if they threw you out on the street with your newborn child? Subscribe if this hurts you too. While Sarah tried to keep her daughter alive with the warmth of her chest, just a few miles away, another world was spinning upside down. Michael descended the glass elevator from the 20th floor with his hands in his pockets and his brow furrowed. Everything around him gleamed white marble, soft lights, employees in grey suits with measured smiles. St. Christopher Hospital wasn't just a private clinic, it was a jewel of investment for the Wellington group, his direct inheritance. He passed a group of doctors who were hurrying by. No one stopped him. Everyone knew who he was. The heir, the visionary's son, the young millionaire who, despite everything, looked empty. He had studied what they told him to, signed what they ordered him to, directed what they imposed on him, but he slept poorly, lived worse, loved nothing. That night he decided not to wait at the main entrance. He asked the driver to pick him up on the side street. He wanted to walk, get a little wet, feel something, and it was that detour that led him to her. From a distance through the mist, he saw her, a hunched figure, covered with a jacket. It could have been anyone, but it wasn't. There was something in that bundle in her arms, something small, fragile. Michael stopped. He felt he should approach, not as a businessman, as a man. His steps were slow, and then he saw her up close. The pale face, the wet hair, and a baby. Without thinking, he took off his coat. She refused it with her eyes. She didn't trust. "Is she alive?" She barely nodded. Michael felt a pang. He crouched down, for the first time in front of a stranger, and there, under the rain, he took the baby in his arms. The world stopped. She was so small, so warm, so quiet. The baby opened her eyes and stopped crying. Michael held her as if she were made of glass. He looked at the mother and said, "You can't be here. This isn't right." He looked at the hospital. "Come with me, please, let me help you." She didn't respond, but she didn't pull away. And in that silence, a decision was born that would change everything. For seconds, Sarah remained motionless. Something in that man's eyes disarmed her. It wasn't compassion, it was something more human, cleaner. She hesitated. She had learned that accepting help was a trap, but the baby slept better in his arms. "I don't want to steal your time," she whispered. "This isn't your problem." Michael shook his head. "Yes, it is. If I ignore it, I'm part of the problem." He placed his coat over her. She didn't protest. She was shivering. "Come on, just inside. The little one needs warmth." Sarah closed her eyes. She was at her limit. Her body wouldn't respond anymore. And then she let herself be guided. Michael helped her stand up. He carried the little girl in his arms. They entered through the hospital's side door. The receptionist recognized him. "Mr. Wellington, call neonatology now and get me a room. This baby needs urgent attention." "But sir, she's my responsibility now." Two nurses arrived. They took the little girl away. Sarah wanted to follow them, but she collapsed. Michael caught her. "You need attention too." She looked at him, distrustful, but she didn't resist. Inside the room they attended to her. Tests, IV fluids, monitoring, and for the first time, Sarah cried, silently. On the other side of the glass, Michael watched the incubator. Something inside him burned. He didn't understand what, but it hurt, and he knew, in that instant, that he was no longer the same man. "Do you think rich people can have true compassion? Let me know below." The room was white, silent, cold. The sound of the heart monitor marked time. Sarah lay motionless, staring at the ceiling, tired, empty. A nurse adjusted the IV. She didn't speak. Michael was in the hallway, sitting, looking at the floor. The little girl was stable, but his mind wasn't. He couldn't stop thinking about that woman's face, that face without hope. He entered the room with soft steps. "She's going to be okay," he said. Sarah looked at him. Red eyes, muted voice. "Thank you. I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." Michael sat beside her. "I don't know either. I just couldn't keep walking." She closed her eyes and spoke. "I was born in a poor neighborhood. My mother died when I was 6. My father disappeared. I was raised between borrowed homes." Pause. "I never had insurance or medical care, and I never imagined being a mother." The words were sweet knives. "When I found out I was pregnant, the father had already left. I worked, sold candy, cleaned houses. It wasn't enough. I got sick. The pregnancy got complicated. Today, I thought we were going to die." Silence. Michael listened. "I'm not going to let this happen again," he said. "Not under my name." "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He just left the room, and something in him had no turning back. The dining room was impeccable, cold. The Wellington family dined in silence. Michael didn't touch his plate. His grandmother, Eleanor, stared at him. "You're very quiet. Did something happen at the clinic?" "Yes. They expelled a woman who had just given birth for not being able to pay, and I helped her. Now she's in a room with her daughter." Eleanor sighed. "You can't intervene in every dramatic case. There are rules. Rules that allow a baby to die on the street. Rules that sustain this fortune. Don't forget you didn't build anything. You'll only inherit if you respect it." Silence. "If respecting this means ignoring misery, then I don't want to inherit anything." Eleanor looked at him. "You talk like your father." Before they silenced him, Michael stood up. He didn't respond. He left. He returned to the hospital, entered the room. "How is she?" "Better, but I have to leave." "Where?" "Nowhere, but I can't stay here. I don't want to owe you anything." "You don't owe me anything, but you're not alone either." She looked at him, tearful. She wanted to believe him. And that night, Sarah decided whether to flee or stay. The sun began to filter through the hospital windows when Sarah's name crossed an unexpected frontier, the legal department of the Wellington Group. Sebastian, Michael's uncle, didn't take long to pull his strings. He had always been the guardian of structures, the one in charge of making sure nothing stained the honor of the family name. Upon learning that his nephew had taken in a stranger, he ordered one of the lawyers to investigate who she was. They didn't expect to find much, but what they discovered stirred up debris from the past. Sarah's last name didn't say much, until her middle name appeared in an old file: Sarah Brennan, daughter of Patrick Brennan. Sebastian frowned. That name sounded familiar, though he hadn't heard it in years. He ordered a review of the corporate records from the 90s. A dust-covered folder revealed the truth. Patrick Brennan had been founding partner of the Wellington Group's first clinic, brilliant doctor, meticulous administrator, and he had disappeared, without a trace, without inheritance, without lawsuits. Just a legal void that allowed Robert Wellington, Michael's father, to completely absorb the partnership. The lawyer closed the report with trembling hands. This could become very complicated. Sebastian remained silent for a long time. Then he ordered the folder sealed and told no one to tell Michael anything. Not yet. But silence wasn't an option for everyone. That same afternoon, Michael found the document on his desk, anonymous, but with a note, "Look carefully at your last name." He read it without blinking. Each page pushed him toward a more painful truth. His father, the man he had always admired, could have betrayed, swindled, even destroyed the life of Sarah's father. His blood burned. He left the building without saying a word. He drove himself, without escort, to the hospital. He went straight to Sarah's room. She noticed he was different, pale, hands clenched, but she said nothing. "We need to talk," he said. He sat in front of her and placed the documents on the bed. Sarah read them slowly, at first without understanding, then, with a knot in her throat. "My father?" she asked with a broken voice. Michael nodded. "Your father was my father's partner, and they erased him from the map. Literally, they kept everything." She bit her lips. The world swayed under her feet. "I didn't know anything," she said, but tears were already clouding her vision. Michael took her hand. "You're not to blame, but you deserve to know the truth, and decide what to do with it." Sarah pulled away. "This is too much. Too much for me. I just want to take care of my daughter, not fight with ghosts." Michael respected her reaction, but inside him, a storm had already begun. He wasn't willing to hide any more truths, and even if it meant confronting his own family, he would do it. The room remained silent for a long time, with the documents still open on the bed. Sarah looked at them as if they were ashes from a story she never asked to inherit. Michael, in front of her, didn't move a muscle. He knew that any wrong word could break what was barely beginning to be built between them. "I don't know if I want to know more," she finally said, in a low, hoarse voice. "I don't want revenge. I don't want money. I just want peace." Michael nodded with respect. "And you'll have it. But I'm not going to allow them to continue hiding this. Not for you, for your father, for your daughter." Sarah looked at him, for the first time, without fear, just exhaustion. "And what are you going to do?" Michael took a deep breath. "I'm going to confront my family. Resign if necessary, but I won't continue being complicit in any of this." Sarah closed her eyes. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. "You don't have to lose everything for me." Michael stood up. "I'm not losing it. I'm choosing it. Because if I have to choose between following a dirty legacy or building a new one with you, with both of you, the choice is already made." She observed him, as if she was seeing who he really was for the first time. A man who, although raised among luxuries, chose truth. A man who didn't look at her from above, but face to face. "I'm scared, Michael." "Me too." Silence. "But if you stay," he added, "I won't let you go." She lowered her gaze, then raised it, slowly, firmly. "I'll stay." That word was like a collective sigh, as if something in the air loosened, as if life finally began to spin in the right direction. That night, Michael entered the family room with the same document in hand. In front of his grandmother, his uncle, and 3 board executives, he placed the evidence on the table. "You knew. You always knew." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "You don't have direct proof, just suspicions and old papers." "I have my conscience," he replied, "and that's enough for me." Sebastian stood up. "If you take one more step, you're out of the group." "I'm already out." He took off the ring with the family emblem. He placed it on the table. "I resign. But I'm not leaving alone." Everyone looked at him, not understanding. "I'm taking my name and my story, and I'm going to tell it all." He left the room without looking back. He returned to the hospital. Sarah was waiting for him, sitting on the bed, with the baby sleeping in her arms. "Well?" Michael smiled, exhausted. "I'm free." She lowered her gaze to her daughter's sleeping face. "Then, so are we. If this act of love and courage touched your soul, leave your like." The first headlines appeared the next day. in digital portals, in morning newscasts, on social networks that no longer forgave silence. Wellington Group heir denounces his own family for cover-up and corporate fraud. The image of Michael leaving the family building with documents in hand circulated as a symbol of rupture. The media requested interviews, cameras followed him to the hospital door. Some journalists discovered Sarah's name and began to stalk. They wanted a story, a victim, a romance. But Sarah didn't want to be any of that, just a mother. Michael shielded the hospital. He spoke with management. No one entered without his authorization. He had taken the biggest step of his life, but he wouldn't let her pay the price. Outside, the family empire swayed. Investors withdrew their funds. Former employees spoke up. Ex-partners revealed shady deals. Everything that was buried began to emerge like lava. Eleanor Wellington called an emergency meeting. "This is a betrayal," she said, with an icy stare. Michael didn't just resign, he destroyed the family name. Sebastian nodded with contained rage. He allied himself with Brennan's daughter. "This is disguised revenge. Well, let them keep the ashes." Eleanor spat. "I won't crawl for forgiveness." Meanwhile, at the hospital, the tranquility they had managed to build suddenly broke. Sarah woke up startled. The baby wasn't breathing normally. Her skin was pale, her lips purple. She screamed. The monitor lit up. The nurses ran. "She's convulsing." They took her to emergency. Sarah trembled. She couldn't enter. The automatic door closed in front of her. Michael arrived seconds later and found her on her knees, hugging her own body. "What happened?" "I don't know. I don't know." Suddenly she stopped moving. He crouched down. He hugged her. He held her with all his soul. "She's going to be okay. Listen to me. She's going to get through this. I can't lose her, Michael. She's all I have. You're not going to lose her. I promise you." Inside the room, doctors fought against time. Michael wasn't a believer, but he closed his eyes and silently murmured everything he had never said out loud. That he would change everything, that he would be better, that if someone in heaven was listening, to save that little girl. 40 minutes passed. The door opened. A doctor came out with a tired smile. "She's stable. It was a mild neurological crisis. She needs observation, but she's out of danger." Sarah fell to her knees. Michael caught her before she touched the ground. They looked at each other. They cried. They didn't know what would come next. But for the first time they felt that, if they were together, they could endure anything. The room now had flowers. A hand-knitted blanket covered the crib. The silence was no longer heavy. It was peace. The baby slept deeply with a small smile that seemed impossible after so much pain. Sarah watched her from the bed. Her eyes still had shadows, but her gaze was no longer the same. It wasn't fear. It was calm. It was love. Michael entered with 2 coffees in hand. He no longer wore expensive suits. He wore simple, comfortable clothes. For the first time, he seemed to breathe freely. "She sleeps as if nothing had happened," he said, sitting beside her. "Children have that magic," Sarah replied. "They don't hold grudges against the world." They looked at each other in silence. They didn't need to say more. In the days that followed, Michael took care of dissolving the last legal ties with his family. He rejected the inheritance. He gave up his share of the group. Not on impulse. Out of conviction. He used part of his savings for something he never thought he'd do. He bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, with a garden and a blue door. It didn't have marble or a private elevator, but it had light. It had calm. It had a future. Sarah hesitated at first. "You don't have to do this for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, for us, because I finally understand what it means to have something worth taking care of." And she, for the first time, accepted without resistance. They moved in together, not like a fairy tale, but like 2 survivors who decided to rebuild themselves from scratch. But Michael wanted to do something more, something for others, something that made sense. With the support of former colleagues who still believed in him, he founded a small clinic on the outskirts of the city. He called it Brennan House. "It's your last name," he told Sarah on inauguration day. "And I want many other women like you to enter through that door and leave alive, dignified, heard." She cried without shame. "Thank you." The clinic opened with few resources but with soul. They attended single mothers, women without medical coverage, pregnant women at risk. There they didn't ask about insurance, they only asked, "How are you feeling?" The story of Sarah and Michael began to circulate by word of mouth, not as a scandal but as hope. And although the Wellington fortune still tried to discredit them, people's hearts no longer responded to money but to truth. One afternoon, Sarah went out to the patio with her daughter in her arms. The little one was already babbling. She played with a leaf between her fingers. Michael watched them from the doorway. He didn't need anything more. He had resigned from the world he knew, and he had gained something that world could never buy: a family, a cause, real love. Years passed with the softness of someone who has learned to live without running. The house with the blue door no longer looked new. It had marks, traces of small steps, scribbles on walls that were never erased. It had history. The little girl whom they called Emma grew up with a joy that overflowed to everyone. She had Sarah's curious gaze and Michael's restless hands. Every step she took was living proof that love, even that which is born in the midst of pain, can flourish and heal. Every week Sarah prepared homemade cookies and took them to the clinic. Emma distributed them among the women waiting for care, among crying babies and scared mothers. "Why do we do it, Mom?" she asked one day, her mouth full of crumbs. Sarah stroked her hair. "Because when you were born, someone did something beautiful for us. And now, it's our turn." Brennan House Clinic had become a real refuge. It didn't have the machinery of a big hospital or the publicity of a multinational. But it had human faces. It had hugs. It had presence. One grey afternoon, under gentle rain, like that of years past, a young woman wrapped in a wet blanket arrived at the door. She carried her days-old baby in her arms. She was soaked, shivering, with eyes full of fear. She didn't have to explain anything. Michael saw her from the hallway and approached calmly. "Come on, you're safe now." He took her inside, sat her down, offered her hot tea. Emma watched her from a corner, with the same eyes that once silently pleaded. She understood more than she said. Sarah appeared minutes later. She handed her a towel, a dry blanket, and accompanied her to the evaluation area. "You're not alone," she said with a serene voice. "Here no one's going to throw you out." While the woman cried silently, grateful, Sarah approached the window and watched the rain fall. For an instant she was again that young woman sitting on the sidewalk, with a weak creature in her arms, not knowing if she would live one more night. And she thought, "I was never rescued, I was recognized." The past no longer hurt, it had been the bridge. When the sun returned between the clouds, Sarah returned to the office, took her daughter's hand, and led her to the garden. Michael was waiting for them under the magnolia tree he had planted himself. Emma ran toward him and hugged him around the waist. "Dad, will you tell me again how you saved me?" Michael smiled. "I wasn't the one who saved you, my love. It was you who rescued me." The camera would pull away silently, if this were a movie. But it's not. It's a story like so many that aren't told. A story where love doesn't solve everything, but changes everything. Where an expelled woman found home, where a broke millionaire found soul, where a little girl came into the world to remind them that the most valuable thing is priceless. If you believe that love can change destinies, subscribe. This story still lives in each one of us.